What is everybody? Welcome to Truth and Transparency. It is Tuesday happy hour. Cheers. If you guys are on the East Coast, it's about just 5 till 5:30. So if you're back, I guess 3 hours from now, you're about 2:30 out. So, anyways, welcome. My name is Lana, and I will be your host today, as always. Host, not hose. So, what is good? We're gonna talk about some things. Um, Today's episode is titled "A $10,000 FOIA Request for the Name Kaylee and Fundraiser." If you were to search through emails and to sort them all out, redact them if necessary, but there should be no redactions needed. But to do all of that, $10K. Why? Say what? Let's talk about it. But first, in order for us to talk about that title, there's some background to it, okay? There is some background to it. Now, what you guys are looking at is this was unsealed recently, right? And this is from batch number 1. This is item number 12, dated June 18th, 2025 was the date of the filing. And this was the meeting minutes. And what it has to do with, as you can see where it starts over here off to the left, at 1:25 and 5 seconds in the afternoon. Okay. The management is the sealed section starts here. And the way they did this is it's in like an Excel table. So what you're looking at here is, yo ho, I'll call you back. Okay. What you're looking at here is the times. This is who the speaker is, and then this is the note within it. So it's not technically transcripts, okay, but it's meeting minutes. Okay. Something I want to point out is the meeting minutes here at 1:26 and 3 seconds. Oopsies. I hit the wrong button there. Okay. So defense counsel, my understanding of the state's position is if we don't have a problem or they don't have a problem with us confronting this evidence, again, this is about the alternate perpetrators. Okay. So both sides has submitted a material in briefing. So unless you have specific questions, I don't know that there is much to discuss, that much difference between the state's position and our position. Does the court have specific questions? Defense counsel asks. And of course, judge is like, I don't have specific questions, just so vague, like, okay, well, our briefs are enough. But the defense counsel, Elisa Masseth, says, my understanding of the state's position is if they don't have a problem with us confronting this evidence, and to the extent that we do that throughout the trial, we will do that step by step. If there is a development by the end, what we were asking for the court is to then give the alternate perpetrator instruction to the jury. We will discuss that then. We have absolutely no intention of using those words in our opening statement. Okay. And now I want to know all about this because it matters on how I wanted to break something down. What is up, Truth Nation Uncensored, baby? Touch your toes. Really good to see you in here. So the judge then says, let's find out what the state's position is. And it's like, the state's position is in their brief. Our position is in our brief. What are you talking about? Well, let's find out what the state's position is. I, too, was curious in their briefing as to the statement. They have no objection to confrontation and cross-examination, which of course they have, but then the question becomes scope. Exactly. And let me tell everybody what that means. I've had the awesome privilege of representing myself in so many matters. And I say awesome like sarcastically. All right. But I chose to represent myself because the amount of money that it would cost me to get these motherfuckers up to speed, I'm going to be blowing through my money and not even use them in court. Okay. So I'd rather just pay you to be second chair and sit there and make sure that if you hear a question that should be objected to and I miss it, speak up. Speak on them. Speak on them titties. Point being, scope. If the state has a witness list, okay, on direct examination, if I only ask you certain questions about a scope, meaning certain material, you don't get to come in on cross-examination and ask questions that's outside of that scope. Okay? You'd have to build up to that in some capacity. Otherwise, you're not allowed to ask those questions and you would have to recall them back as your own witnesses. The great thing about cross-examination, though, is you can ask leading questions. Okay? Whereas on direct examination, I cannot ask you a leading question. You are my own witness, and my question should be stated to you in such a fashion that you're basically giving a narrative. Okay? So, now, check this out. The state says, I think we may be dealing a bit with an issue of semantics. The state views alternate perpetrator evidence as being a very defined category. Defendant will argue that he didn't do it and that this particular person did it. Defense does not have factual basis to make that kind of argument. They have provided general information that they might ask investigators about to deal with the scope of the investigation, but not to the point of justifying them pointing to a particular person saying that that's an alternative perpetrator. So, ready for this. Here's the issue. If an investigation is not properly run and they aren't developing information then to rather like you're vetting this, okay, we're clearing this. And if the investigation is so bare bones and doesn't hit on anything, whereas you had no way of how are you clearing this person, like truly clearing them. What did you do to clear somebody? But when everything is just done in like vague or ambiguous motions that, and I'm saying like when I say motions, not physically doing a motion brief, but when you're walking through the motions and you're really not doing anything and it's just all for fluff, okay? It's kind of like the Karen Reed case. The investigation prevented by what they chose to do or lack of what they didn't do, it then would impede somebody's ability to defend themselves in certain capacities because it's like, for example, you didn't get Brian Higgins' cell phone. You didn't get the McCabe's cell phone records. You didn't get the Albert cell phone records for the Karen Reed case. All right. During the course of the investigation, how do you not do that? Right? Here in the Brian Kober Idaho4 case, it's a little bit different. It's you went and preserved these items, but you never did anything with them. So, for example, you went out and got all these DNA samples, but what did you do with them? You like literally stored them in a refrigerator. So, based on the order, this is how I envision it in my head. Based on the order that the state would go if there was a trial in this case, is kind of like what Hank Brennan did. Okay. Hank Brennan went in a specific order, right? But more importantly, he weeded out a ton of shit so that Karen couldn't use it for cross-examination purposes. And if she wanted to bring up all of this fairy tale conspiracy crap, you're going to have to do that in your case in chief. But I'm not going to give you that opportunity in the state's, well, in Karen's case, the Commonwealth's case. You understand? So I always look at it from the standpoint of, okay, if I was to prosecute this case, if I was to defend it, if I was a defendant in this case, how would I expect my lawyers to represent me? Or, hey, shouldn't we talk about this, this, and this? They're going to play dirty. How can they possibly fuck us? So I think about all those crazy things. All right. And then I usually will text or email people that I know with my questions, and they're like, dude, does your brain ever stop? And I'm like, sometimes. No, it just goes. So that's how I think about things. So for this purpose, Bill Thompson, what was going to be Bill Thompson's order to truly call people to the stand if this was to go to a trial? And how was he going to present his narrative to the world, to the jurors? And what got me even more thinking about this, guys, is when I heard Othram. When I heard Othram speak at CrimeCon and in these interviews, and I'm like, you guys, they didn't have dick, okay? They did not have dick. They didn't. Othram says it. They did it single-handedly, okay? But here we're not going to be bringing in the IGG. Both sides wanted to keep it out. And they're going to come up with some fluff piece to tell to the jury on how Brian Kober even got on their radar. Right? So going back to here. So state says they have provided general information that they might ask investigators. And I want to highlight that. That's the only people that you can ask. Okay. You're going to, so, the reason that Ann Taylor could not stipulate to a damn thing in chain of custody and how people were ever talking to each other, exchanging information, is you need to make Bill Thompson, you're going to need to be doing a ton of objection, lacks foundation. Like, how is this person testifying to this right now? And Ann Taylor was going to be doing that all day long. And if she wasn't, then shame on her. Because you can't just start from a story and just speak out of your ass. You have to develop that. And where I think Bill Thompson was going to try to like develop his story beginning not on chapter 1, but on chapter 15. Okay. And it's like, you cannot let Bill Thompson get away with that. Like, he needs to be prepared to call from the beginning all of these people, talking about the first responders, talking about Payne, Mowry, because the FBI was not there from jump. The ISP people that actually were at the scene to gather the evidence, and then how many different times they had to keep going back, and why were they going back? What was the purpose? Because the question has to come eventually, why would you continue to go back if what you're going and getting, you're not doing anything with in the first place? How do you miss a glove on the ground? Well, Officer Payne was going to argue that that glove was not there. Well, I hope to God somebody on Ann's team was prepared to say that glove was most certainly there, and they could have done it through cross-examination, right? Or they're going to have to show Payne the video and say, what's that right there? And he can just say, nothing. Because it's going to be zoom in. That's not the glove. Where did you find the glove that you picked up? Where'd you take these pictures from? We have still yet to see that in the discovery dump that we've been waiting for, getting like pieces by pieces by pieces. Okay. So this is the stuff that goes on in the back of my mind, which is everything that Ann Taylor's going to be arguing for third party culpability is you're going to have to get it through the investigation. Okay. But if you're stipulating to how they got to Brian Koberger, which is off of fluff, then doesn't that hurt your ability to do the third party culprit? And I'm asking you guys this question because the person that could answer it could only be Ann Taylor or her team with this specific case, because you want to throw out some options as to like, how were you planning on doing this then? Like, people that want to learn like me, that's my question, is if they can't mention IGG, they're going to have to eventually get to the point where they talk about the sheath, and that there's multiple. What we found out is it's not just Brian Koberger's DNA on the sheath. The victim's blood was on the sheath, and then an unknown male contributor was also in the mix of the blood from the victims. But they didn't do anything to try to figure out who that belonged to, but they did everything under the sun to figure out who the other part of the sheath DNA belonged to, but that would never even come out in this trial, that it was done that way. Think about that. They have provided general information that they might ask investigators about to deal with the scope of the investigation, but not to the point of justifying them pointing to a particular person, saying that that's an alternate perpetrator. We can't point to a person, okay, specifically because you didn't do your job to rule these people out. So I can point to 20 people and just say, like, you have this unknown DNA at the scene, and you have all of this DNA that belongs to people that you took, right? But you never compared it. Why did you not compare it? You just need one investigator, just like in the Delphi case. There's got to be one investigator in an email somewhere, somehow, that they would have emailed and said that they believe that this could potentially have been 2 people. That's all you need to find. You find that one email where people are conversing through email to talk about that there could be potentially more than one person. And did that come up, in your debriefing sessions? And with that alone, then why would you be just so tunnel vision on just that one sample from the sheath and not the blood and not the mixture in the blood of the victims on the sheath? That's not Brian Koberger's. Like, what? So the state says that there is mention about the defense's theory that there might be more than one perpetrator. That is not alternate perpetrator evidence. They are welcome to cross-examine the scope and the quality of the investigation. But they should be directed that they cannot focus or direct the jury to say this other person or this other person is the person who committed these crimes. Well, that's not what they're going to say. That's absolutely ridiculous that he's even mentioning that, because the defense has that's not what they're going to do. It's kind of like in the Karen Reed case where it's called the Bodie defense, where you're pointing out that you want this Bowden, the Bowden defense is where you ask the judge to give an instruction about the fact that the investigation is absolutely pure garbage. Okay. And nobody could be going down for this crime because of this shitty ass motherfucking investigation. Moto Man, $300. What are you doing? Maybe I'm dumb, but if they weren't going to use the IGG, then what other evidence did they have to convict BK? Well, because they were never going to say that they used IgG, they were just going to say that, like all these other tips that were coming in from the FBI, people calling them in, that it was just a tip like that. And so you're not missing anything. There is literally nothing else. Well, and that where it becomes that there would be nothing else is that investigative tool not being talked about, which Othram's basically arguing now at CrimeCon that this doesn't need to be a tool that's used at the end of an investigation, but rather at the beginning of an investigation. And what's hilarious to me is that then why aren't we claiming it? Because the tool is how you went about it. And that should be documented. And there should be the chain of custody. There should be the search warrants that happen when they're supposed to happen. Because it all is all about still probable cause, that you need to have probable cause to get your search warrant to be able to put in the database, regardless if it's even the law enforcement ones. So, but we're going to come back to that because that's going to get into more of like my ending part. But it's definitely not a dumb question. It's actually a beautiful question. Because it's all about a process. It's all about decision making as an investigator. Why did you decide to do this versus that? You know? You have no idea what anything's going to come back. And if you're going solely off of working the case, how you were taught, and doing things by the book, it should just, the case should develop organically, right? Right. Well, now, after the state speaks, this is what the defense says. I want to clarify 2 reasons why there was a statement about there could be more. One being that we have not looked at all of the tip evidence that is coming in, which is just a ginormous amount. Okay, so her first thing, and I read it like verbatim how it was typed. I don't really talk like that. Her first point is, okay, I would like to answer what the state just said. And her first thing that she goes to, which is awesome, she goes to the tips. And why she goes to the tips, what that tells me is that you're already thinking how you guys have stipulated on how they're going to say that they got to Brian Kober without talking about the IgG, okay, is that it has to come in the form of a tip. And are you going to say that it came from, whether regardless if it was somebody coming in, I mean, somebody writing in, anonymous tip. At the end of the day, what made you give any weight to a tip that said you should investigate Brian Koberger? You know how many tips came in? Why would that get any weight? That's where the question lies. And in order for the defense to be able to properly, even if you stipulated to that, the defense needs to have their angle to still be able to poke holes at this investigation. Because there was something like, I mean, the tips still could be coming and say over 40,000 tips. 40,000 tips. And the defense has maintained the position that nobody from Brian Koberger's family called in a tip. Not a sister, okay? So did that at all change before the plea came? Because right here she says, we have not looked at all of the tip evidence. It's the first thing that she says. It's just ginormous, she says. We wouldn't just surprise you. We know you don't like surprises to the judge. When it comes to the other thing with regard to numbers beyond 4, I think that the court has seen in the exhibits the number of people who have been examined for DNA. And this is what got me like pumped. Because I'm like, thank you. The DNA, the amount of, hey, can we get this, hey, can we swab you? Hey, can we get your phone? Can we download it? Okay, 68 devices. 68. Okay. 68 devices. Dude, nobody even looked at this shit. Then how many samples? Then they did nothing with them. And that's what she's going to say right here. Is that I think the court has seen in the exhibits the number of people who have been examined for DNA. There are some people whose DNA was extracted and comparisons were made. And there is a whole other group that are on those state exhibits where the DNA samples were taken but were never developed into any extraction for comparison purposes. And you know who one of those people are? And I just cannot believe it. I mean, I can. But like who I'd be hammering at is the coach. And not that because I think that he did it, but like his phone was off and his phone's never off. And it was off during the time of the crime. And I was saying, well, it'd be way more better odds he was probably having an affair. Not that he did have an affair. Okay. But point being is, how are you collecting? What's the purpose of collecting all of this DNA samples if you're not going to do anything with them? It's like you already know who the fucking killer is, man. You understand? If I already know something, but I'm not telling you guys that I know it, but I just got to go out there and do all this stuff. It's like I know what's going to come back before it comes back. Because it is just pure stupidity. You should lose your job if you're collecting DNA samples from people and just storing them in a fridge. You guys, it is a fact. It is a fact that Brian's DNA is on a piece of evidence. Okay. But it is also a fact that another male other than Brian, his DNA is 100% from the knife sheath that was mixed with Kaylee and Maddie's blood. So think about how I'm going to explain this, though. Because can the state slip up and say, okay. How do I want to say this? All right. Any investigator that gets up on the stand, when the state would have them as their witness and they walk them through what they were doing in this case, okay? And they get to the point of vetting somebody's alibi, okay? Or if they were involved or not, hey, if you give us your DNA, we can, like if you had nothing to do with this, then your DNA should not be at the crime scene, right? So give us your DNA so we can exclude you. Based on the reports, it is 100% everybody knew that there was DNA found on the knife sheath so early on because it was transported. The knife sheath was transported from MPD to Idaho State Police. They were able to get a profile. But the question is at the time that they were able to get a profile from the button snap or the strap or whatever they want to say it is, you're going to sit here and tell me that they developed that single source male, but where the blood was located, that had a mixture of 3 two of them being Kaylee and Maddie. The date that I'm waiting to find out is, when did you figure out that that there was 3 sources and that third source was a male contributor? What's the date on that? Because you can't see the DNA that they're saying is Brian's, right? But you can physically see that there's blood on the sheath and that you'd want to test, you're testing that, right? So you know that you're taking an extraction from where the blood is on the sheath. And I want the date on when it came back, that it would be 3 sample, like there would be 3 profiles, right? Because I know the date on the sheath. November 20th. Blaker's transporting it on the 21st. Right? Othram says that they were actually able to get all the SNP and be able to have the SNP profile by Thanksgiving. Okay? And so I'm saying this is a great path for, but here's this other path, which is the blood from the same object, right? And so if there's who separated the mixture, because at the Delphi case, that was the problem that they were having, is they had at the crime scene Richard Allen. None of his DNA was at that crime scene, but yet there are samples that are there's single female profile samples, there's 5 and 6 person mixtures with male in it for sure, and none of it is Richard Allen. Okay. And it's like, how did this jury determine that Richard Allen was guilty? It like broke my heart, right? Because his DNA was nowhere at this crime scene, but all these other unknowns. Like some mixtures 3, some mixtures 4, some mixtures 5 and 6 person mixtures. And they're sitting here saying that at the Delphi case, only 1 person committed that crime. And I'm like, you sick son of a bitches. Ain't no motherfucking 1 person does that shit. Then tell me who, as a juror, okay, then whose DNA is all this blood mixed in with? What the hell are you talking about? Oh, it's Richard Allen because of that bridge video. I spit on that video. That video is absolute shit for evidence. So when you go back to what the defense team says, is they said that we're not going to throw any surprises at you, but when it comes to the other thing with regard to numbers beyond 4, I think the courts can see in the exhibits in the number of people who have been examined for DNA, there are some people whose DNA was extracted and comparisons were made. And then there's this whole other group that those state exhibits where the DNA samples were taken, but were never developed into an extraction for comparison purposes. Also, names, I think we will know if they develop over the course of the case and how people are coming in, whether it's in the form of initials or if it's in the form of names, or if they are putting these people they have listed on the stand and it's very clear what their names are. We'll have discussion of what's fair game in closing argument. I will leave it at that. I'm just like, wait a second. Repeat that, Mathis? Wait, what are you talking about? Because why do they have to talk in code here? Like, this is sealed, right? So go back to this. she's talking about the witness list. Okay, what she's talking about is this witness list. But think about your lay people. This is all your law enforcement witness list. Okay. What they're talking about here is the lay person witness list. And a lay person is like, Emily Allant, lay person. People that they were out with that night, their friends, like lay people. So Mathis says, also, names I think we will know if they develop over the course of the case and how people are coming in. Whether it's in the form of initials or if it's in the form of names. Were they really planning on using people's initials on the stand? Like, wait, what? So, or if it's in the form of names, or if they are putting these people they have listed, lay people, on the stand. Are you going to be calling these people to the stand? And it's very clear what their names are. Like, we know what their names are. They have to know what their names are. Right. And I'm just thinking to myself, there's going to be no initials during the course of of this proceeding, of this trial, right? Were they planning on using initials? Like, did they really think during the case of a trial for 3 months, they're not going to be saying people's names? I'm talking about like a trial. We'll have discussion of what's fair game and closing argument. And now Mathis just talking about closing argument. So the counsel says, what Ms. Mathis just said is exactly what we are concerned about. I'm like, wait, what are you concerned about? Because whatever she just said there doesn't make any sense. Because you don't use initials in a trial. I've just never seen that in my life. Have you guys ever seen that? Okay, they didn't use the Delphi girls were underage. They're juveniles. Okay, that's totally different, and they were the victims. Okay, nobody is of underage in any of this. So he says, what Miss Masseth just said is exactly what we are concerned about, and why we ask the court direct they make an appropriate proffer to justify whoever they want to claim is an alternate perpetrator. Ready? Are you going to sit here and try to tell me that Dylan and Bethany were alternate perpetrators? This is exactly what we were afraid about. Like, what are we afraid about? They need to proffer to justify who they want to claim as an alternate perpetrator. To take the position, if they develop during trial, defeats the entire purpose of the motion in limine and leaves it wide open and just subject to attack or ambush during the course of the trial. We believe that that is not appropriate. And I'm over here just like, you know what? This is crazy. Because all you're going to be doing is attacking the investigation. And I think that the defense was worried about, if they don't call certain people to the stand, how do we attack that? You're going to have to call them yourselves. And then I want to show you guys something. Okay. The defense is entitled to cross-examine about the scope of the state's investigation and the thoroughness of the investigation and the reasonableness of the investigation. Certainly, questions may potentially come about why didn't you do this and why did you do that from the officers, right? Yeah. Where we may get more tenuous is when we start getting into collateral information about individuals. I can understand that a claimed motive might be important as it relates to the reasonableness of the investigation. So then that got me thinking. What's the motive of the case? The state would have to be very careful here, right? Because if their motive, if they're going to be talking about stalking, well, doesn't it look like Jack Showalter was stalking that night at the grub truck? The motive of the case, to me, if it's Brian Kober, is that it's a serial. He wanted to become a serial killer. Right? Then all of a sudden, we get all of this right here for the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. And what I notice is the person that starts to talk is Barlow. And the only time that she talks is when it has to do with the DNA. Okay. So all of these pages, okay, have everything to do with Barlow's talking, and it goes, look at the next page. The judge talks, blacked out. Then Barlow, then the judge, then Barlow, then the judge, then Barlow, then the judge, Barlow, judge, Barlow. All of this has to do with DNA. She's not talking unless it has to do with DNA. That's what she was called to be in for. Then Judge Barlow, Judge Barlow. So this is all DNA. Look at this. Judge Barlow, all DNA. Next page. Barlow, Judge. Where's the state? Where's the state? Look at this. And Taylor doesn't say anything. Counsel for defense. Barlow, Judge Barlow. Like, I mean, all of it. All of it. Judge Barlow. Okay. Now check this. Now, boom. Now at 2:07, we can start seeing it again. Okay. I wanted to talk to you about the summons that went out to the jurors. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You're going to talk about these damn summons? I want to talk about alternate perpetrators, right? But alternate perpetrators, for only 2 pages of that, it all then shifted. And Barlow takes over. So here's my speculation. So warning out there. This is my opinion. I'm speculating. But I'm coming from a place of, I can tell you that if Barlow is up there doing the oral arguing and the state doesn't pop in there, right there, counsel for the state, Thompson. Okay. Everything from that 6 pages worth It all has to do with just the judge and Bicca Barlow. Bicca Barlow only talks about the DNA. Okay. So what do you think Bicca Barlow was speaking about? She's got to be speaking about the fact that there is all of this unknown male DNA in the fucking house, right? But doesn't that just go to what the judge is saying? That you're going to bring that up with the investigators to say, well, at some point you had to have known that you have all this unknown male DNA. And their argument has been, well, not before we arrested Brian Koberger, right? She's got to be talking about if they plan to introduce evidence through the lab work, okay? Your Honor, if they plan on introducing everything through the lab work, we cannot possibly, on cross examination, ask them about the investigation of this case. Do you understand that, Your Honor? They can't just call in these ISP people, okay, from the lab and have them get up on the stand and think that that's where you're going to start with things and talking about the lab, all the items that she collected and, X, Y, and Z and blah, blah, and introducing stuff through the lab because we can't ask them about the investigation because they didn't do the investigation. It was just, this is what they are told. Hey, they bring it to us and then we're scanning it. We're extracting stuff from it. We're working with the pieces that they give us. Okay. If they don't bring something to us, like we're not the ones that decide what gets tested. So that's where I kind of see a little bit of the Hank Brennan coming out in Bill Thompson. And I think that if you go back and you look at all these redactions and what this would have been about, I think that they were laying down the law to say, Your Honor, if they think that they're going to introduce all of this stuff through lab reports, how do we challenge the investigation? You wanted to say, oh, well, when you found out about all of these, you guys still didn't go and get the samples that you had and, toss them through for comparison? So I thought that was really interesting. If you're paying attention to who ends up standing up and saying, you know what, I'm going to throw my tits on the table. And it was Bicca Barlow. And her argument is, in my opinion, is she's talking about lab reports. And I got this weird feeling that if you're going to be introducing stuff through lab reports and through these lab folks, that has nothing to do with the investigation. So that should be like, if you guys are able to follow what I'm throwing down here, it should be really relevant and interesting. we're going to come back to the juror stuff because I'm waiting for the juror questionnaire. So I'm going to hold off on this, the rest of it. But this third party culprit, it went straight to like the DNA. And the defense, I think, was hammering on how are we supposed to develop something if they think they're going to bring people to the stand and introduce stuff through just lab reports. And it's really specific to, I think, the four names. And I'm saying that if those 4 people submitted DNA and it didn't match the DNA at the crime scene, okay, okay, there's still 3 unknown males at the crime scene. And one of them, I think, is pretty significant that it would be mixed in the blood of the 2 victims, and it's on the sheath. So I don't know why that needed to be redacted, though. Did they at least run other samples through CODIS? No. That's why this timeline matters. So let's go back now to this timeline and let's talk about the title here. $10,000 for if you were to go ask, I want every email with Kaylee's name in it and the word fundraiser in it. And any emails that would be between anybody, with the prosecutors, with the police, I mean, within your bounds of FOIA. Ready? Why? Okay. How in the world would that be $10,000? You guys all know what you can do with the emails. Like you just go into the search section and you type the name Kaylee. And then if you want to say Kaylee's first and last name, okay? So 10 grand for you to do emails that have to do with fundraising and Kaylee. Now, what if it was fundraising Kaylee, Maddie, Ethan, Xana? And you did all of those names. Do you know how many emails there would have to be that then they have to go through it? And when you're talking about that you're going to redact some of these emails, what are you redacting? And I'm going to tell you why this is important. Okay. So, who paid for that? Who paid for the healing garden? On campus. Who paid for that? The university through fundraising, wasn't it? Well, the Dunn one says, first of all, hold on, this is great. The Dunn one says this at 6:20. I'm late and lost. What does fundraising have to do with this case? Okay. But yet, a minute later, the Dunn one says it wasn't through they didn't they take donations? Well, then you're not that lost, are you? Within a minute, boom, look at you go. Yeah, didn't they take donations? Yep. People gave contributions given in memory of the victims through the university. Okay. Did they send out newsletters? Did they keep track of that? Do you think that that should be open to figure out, hey, what if the healing garden only costs, let's say, just like easy math, 10 grand, but they brought in 500,000? Think about it. Why should there even be any emailing with who? Who's the emailing going on with it if you're trying to find out, um, hey, I just want to know the emails that have to do with the victims' names and the word fundraising or donation or anything like that. How much was the healing garden? And then how much was brought in? How much was brought in from the university writing a book? Okay, ready? Um, what are they doing with the spot where the house is? What's there? Is there a dog park there yet? Ooh, Meg, yes. The Healing Garden had a QR code to donate also. Yes. Right. Okay. So what are they doing with where the house was? So let's get this straight too. Um, they were adamant about tearing down this house. Okay. Um, and nothing has been there since, right? They do a healing garden. The university doesn't pay for it. They raise the money, but how much money over it, okay, did they get? How much money? And then how was that set up for? Is there scholarships? There and then they're in whose name? Do you have to get anybody's, like, do you have to ask the family if you can do that? Can you just do that on your own? Does the university have to ask, you know, think about this. Think about if it was a celebrity that died, okay? And the university wants to use a celebrity who died that actually went to their university, okay? We want to use their likeliness. We want to use their name. We want to use their brand to do what? Oh, we're going to make this healing garden. And we're going to get all these people to donate. But the healing garden really only cost us, actually, the people that built it, they donated all the everything. Everything was donated. So it actually didn't cost us any money. Then we're going to do scholarships. And so what are we going to just continue to keep this healing garden / scholarship / for the rest of our lives in eternity, that the 4 victims are literally going to be making the university tons of thousands of dollars? And you're charging people $10,000 for us to take a little peek behind the curtain and see what's going on? You know how many emails there must be if you need to charge somebody 10 grand to go through the emails with just Kaylee's name and just fundraising and maybe donations? So then I thought some more about that. And I come back to the discovery. And I come back to hearing that the victims' families had to go out and do FOIA requests if they wanted to know anything, right? Moscow Police Department put out pages or like 1 through 314 reports numbers. ISP put out their written reports. Okay. But if you want interviews, they put out some, pictures or whatever. But everybody that actually this case was going to be prosecuted on, all that stuff is from the FBI. Do you see a link anywhere that says FBI reports anywhere? Nope, I don't. So you're sending these families on wild goose chases. Meanwhile, Moscow, Idaho, the university has literally sat back, and since this tragedy has happened, has literally just done nothing but reel in the money. Have made hand over fist on the victims' names. And the families are asking for stuff, and you guys are telling them to go pony up the dough and pay for FOIA requests? Because I want to know stuff that has to do with my daughter being killed on your campus. And I want to know how, I don't know, you've profited this whole fucking time off of it. And we were supposed to have a trial, but then we didn't. And y'all were leaking shit to like mainstream media for them to make hundreds of thousands of dollars. Can you imagine if you were a parent? That's crazy. What's Brett Payne in charge of over there at the university? The healing garden? Because that would make about the right sense for this case. Brett Payne, security guard of the healing garden. Make sure nobody vandalizes the healing garden. I could just see it now. Lana's spreading rumors. Brett Payne is the new security guard of the healing garden, and we pay him $45 an hour to stand out there and make sure that nothing pops off. Okay. Amanda says estates of the victims can sue. That's what the fuck needs to happen. Exactly. Anybody's passing by and you got Trulies in your backpack, we're going to be pouring them out. Okay. No, but seriously, I was doing some calculations. All right. I was doing a lot of calculations. And I think that we should peek behind the curtain a little bit. And I'm just curious, have they been holding back some information due to potential like what do they got in the works here? Because if you were going to trial, you had to have what the FBI had already. Okay, you can't be getting a surprise at trial what the FBI is going to be testifying to. It's like unheard of. You don't do that. So why wouldn't Bill Thompson and the prosecution team be providing the FBI material that's given to the prosecutors and in the Latah County prosecutors' hands, okay, and it's part of their case, it's their case. Why couldn't they give that to the families? Like, what the hell's going on, right? And then why isn't there a bond between Othram and all of the families? Why is there only a bond between Othram and the Chapins? You don't think the other families have wanted to know things throughout this whole course of this investigation in this case? I'm scratching my head at that. You know, there's the prosecution team and the investigators from jump literally divided and conquered with the like separating these families. It should have been them against the world, man. You know, it should have been the families against everybody. And then everybody's going to be obviously supporting the families, you know. So, but I was just it's kind of weird to me to see that um I find it hard to believe that Xana's family, that Maddie's family, and that Kaylee's family wouldn't be so appreciative of what Othram did to the point that they wouldn't want to know about Othram, how Stacey Chapin and her family wanted to know about Othram. I mean, isn't that weird? It's weird for me. And maybe they were all offered, hey, and everybody was just like, no. And Ethan's family is the only family that took up to want to see how that all happened and thank them and be involved in some capacity with like, hey, you know, this stuff needs to change. You know, IgG needs to be used immediately, not at the end, or and definitely not in a way that it could potentially be tossed from a case and a case get tossed out and the right person not prosecuted because things weren't done right. So we need to have things being done right with the communication and with law enforcement from jump when you are dealing with working with, you know, Othram in the capacity of investigative genetic genealogy, right? You guys, it was Steve that stood out and said, why aren't you guys bringing in like one of these third party companies to do IgG? He said that in freaking at the end of November, beginning of December. You guys remember? It was him. It was Steve that was out in front talking to Fox News and literally was so like frustrated. Right? Do you guys want me to pull up that interview? So I find it hard to believe that Steve and then you just start reading between the lines and you start seeing that the families that just aren't buying everything that's being shoved down their throats, they have a problem with. I'd have a chip on my shoulder if I thought that a university put money in front of my child's murder, right? I'd have a huge problem with that. I'd be telling everybody to go F themselves. Um, okay, check this out.
He had touched so many.
Title of this episode that just dropped from Law and Crime is How Brian Kober Was Really Caught. I cannot believe that mainstream media is over here endorsing our rights being completely fucking violated. How he was really caught. Hey, guess what? That means that PCA is nothing.
Such a good kid. It's hard, it's hard because it's hard to know. He was just an amazing human. He loved everybody. He had touched so many lives.
Ethan Chapin's mother, Stacy, is remembering her oldest triplet nearly 3 years after his senseless murder as she joins a woman who helped solve his case on stage to talk about their new bond.
I could not hug her. And I do think that our paths were meant to intersect.
Wait, what? I cannot believe how Brian Kober was really caught. So, and just for the record, I love Anjanette Levy. Okay, if there's anybody out at mainstream media that's going to go and fight and ask some questions.
It was on the snap of the knife sheath. Kristen said they built out the family trees and determined the source of the DNA likely came from a family in Pennsylvania with
2 Italian families.
Some Italian heritage. That's significant because it would later be determined that Brian Koberger was the source of the DNA on the snap of that knife sheath. On December 10th, the FBI stepped in and took over the family tree search. 9 days later, the feds gave the name Brian.
What she said happened at CrimeCon is that the FBI went rogue. Okay? That they went rogue and did things that they were not supposed to do.
And Koberger to Moscow police, and all of the pieces started to come together. Koberger drove a white Hyundai Elantra. He fit the description given by one of the surviving roommates of the man in all black with bushy eyebrows and lived nearby in Pullman, Washington. And then there was the cell phone data showing that he'd been in Moscow late at night on many occasions leading up to the night of the murders. Koberger was arrested at his parents' home in Pennsylvania on December 30th, 2022. He pleaded guilty weeks before jury selection was set to begin just this past summer. Ethan Chapin's mother on stage to talk about the technology that helped catch the person who killed her beautiful boy. Stacy and Kristen actually met just briefly at CrimeCon in 2023, a chance encounter where Stacy said she was sharing her story with other parents of murder victims when a woman who she learned was Kristen came up to her and hugged her and said, "You don't have to worry," and walked away. It wasn't until the gag order was lifted in mid.
What? You don't have to worry.
July that Kristen and Stacy met. Jim and Stacy Chapin flew to Texas right after the gag order was lifted and met with David and Kristen at Othram. I sat down with Kristen and Stacy at CrimeCon over the weekend. So let's get back to that hug in 2023.
Can you tell me about that and how much that meant?
Literally all it was. But even at the time, I don't think I realized what it meant. I didn't know who she was. I mean, I literally Googled her name afterwards. But the hug went on to mean literally everything. I didn't tell a soul. I couldn't. I didn't know. I didn't know if I could. I didn't even tell my kids. I told my husband, and that was it. But there were a couple of our darkest days where we literally, and Kristen loved that part of the story, that was like, we relied on that hug, that we were going to get through this thing. It meant there was something out there that was beyond anything that we could potentially, know that we knew about, really.
And I couldn't say more, right? I couldn't say anything.
Right.
But I knew I had to say something.
Right.
Because why do this? Why? I mean, my entire role at Othram is to advocacy for victims. And to see that right next to me, to know that I can say something to help her and to not be able to do it. I just remember that moment. And I remember walking down and telling David, you can fire me if you need to. I hugged her.
just talked to, I just
And I
hugged
said
her.
it's going to be okay because I could not hug her. And I do think that our paths were meant to intersect. There's a lot of,
And the people that made these mistakes is like law enforcement, because we should be able to use this. It shouldn't have been a secret. It should have been in the probable cause affidavit. It should have just been done the right way. And you just need to, and I think Kristen was trying to advocate for that. Like, hey, things need to change. Okay? Things need to change. So
commonalities that I didn't know anything about any of the families at the time outside of what had happened, right? And so we focus on the actual case. And so I didn't know your personality, your relationship with Jim, the fact that you had triplets that were 2 boys and a girl. There are so many commonalities in the sense that we have 2 boys and a girl. And
and we just couldn't. I mean,
Information floating around social media about the case, including the DNA on the sheath, specifically the quantity. The amount of DNA left on the snap of the sheath was actually a large quantity. You might not be able to see it, but it was a lot. And we've talked about that with a DNA expert here on Crime Fix before. It was repeatedly described as trace DNA, and that simply wasn't true.
we could have done this 6 times, 7 times if we had to, right? This wasn't one of those
not
cases
trace
where
DNA.
you're looking at 7 cells like we have in the past.
yeah. And I just, that
So she's saying that this was not something that it was just 7 cells. We had enough there that we could have done this 6 or 7 times. And what she means is to try to develop an SMP.
is a whole piece of why it's important for potentially everybody.
And see, this is the thing that sucks, is that if they could truly talk about it so openly and say, this is how everything went down, and why don't you think investigators are talking about it? Because then they would have to admit that, yeah, how we did everything is exactly how y'all thought we did everything, exactly what the defense was saying, exactly what the prosecution argued that we didn't do. Okay. And it's like, yeah, no, do I think that a murderer who could potentially murder again should go free? Fuck no, you people. No. God, no. No. But I'm saying if they do it like this with this, they do it like this with everything, man. This isn't just, oh, hey, this one time I just lied in a PCA. No. Come on, man. And that's why it was imperative for me to go research the Dr. Moore case and to see these are the same people that said stuff and did things in another case that happened in, a couple years before that. It's the same damn people doing the same damn things.
Because the lack of that information caused social media to make their own interpretations of what they thought it was, and it hurt a lot of people. It hurts the kids involved. It hurts the families involved.
That's what hurt. It hurt you guys.
You can't,
I
and
knew.
all we can do is read it. You can't respond.
And the problem with that, though, is law enforcement chose to do it that way. Law enforcement chose to lie. You get what I'm like? It isn't our fault. It isn't anybody that's talking about this case's fault. We're reading a probable cause affidavit that has nothing in it about using IgG. In fact, they said that that's not how they got to Brian Kober and wrote up this ridiculous way that they said that they got to him. Right? And so if you're going to talk about something, you have to talk about it in its totality and not just pick the pieces. But we didn't make the PCA up. We weren't the ones that said spread that far and wide. Bill Thompson did.
You can't. There's nothing you can
And
do.
I knew that it was fine. I knew what we had done. and no one else did. You brought up the DNA, the FBI coming into this case in December 10th. Yes, but we work with the FBI in hundreds and hundreds of cases. We were the only profile built. People then went down this line of the FBI built a different profile. They didn't.
What do you mean people went down this line? That's what was written in court documents. That's what was filed, is that there's two different profiles. In the state was never, the state just stood there. And so is that a lie?
We work with the FBI in hundreds and hundreds of cases. We were the only profile built. People then went down this line of the FBI built a different profile. They didn't match. There's no such other profile. We were the only advanced DNA lab to test this case.
There you go. We were the only advanced DNA lab to test this case. Told y'all. Told you. One lab. Othram. One lab. Othram. Do you want to know what these people testified to on the stand? In hearings leading up to this? Othram, the only lab, they just had a different boss come December 10th. One lab. Othram was always it. That was the genealogist. That was the FBI taking over and all the secrecy and never even acting like you used IgG.
And it was certain to us from the very beginning, and to the FBI and to the law enforcement working the case, what the answer was, right? But I couldn't tell people that really needed to know.
Okay, so listen to how crazy this now sounds. They had a meeting. So if I was to grab over here, here's the transcripts. So let me get this straight. You guys had a meeting on December 10th, right? And Sarah's like, yeah, tell me about this meeting. It seems like there's a big to-do, right? And you guys decided that, and Payne testifies like, yeah, I was told that Othram had exhausted all of their resources. So the lead investigator is the one that got up on the stand and said that Othram, the way that I understood it is how he says it, is that Othram had exhausted all of their resources. Okay. And that the FBI was going to take over because they had more databases that they could search. Okay. Brooke, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And then so Matthew Gamet got it on the stand and he was questioned too. And it was, yeah, we told Othram to cease work, to stop working on it, and that they were going to then send us everything. And that's when Nancy Taylor was like, yeah, but where is it? What did they send you? Has it ever happened like that in the case that they've ever worked with you? Did they just stop like that? Did Othram stop in this case? And then Matthew Gamet didn't answer that question. He said, our work in that part of it stopped. And that's when I knew for a fact. I was like, exactly. You didn't answer the question.
Know that, like Stacy. And then there was all this stuff going on in the media that we couldn't correct because the people actually working on the case were gagged. And I feel like that hurt.
The people that were actually working on the case who put out the misinformation, Matthew Gamet and Detective Payne, who, if you read the interim policy, he has to be contacted at each point throughout every time that you're making any decisions, as well as the prosecutor. Bill Thompson. I mean, these aren't just random media people that are putting out this information. This happened in a hearing. This is what people testified to under the oath, under the penalties of perjury.
The families the most, and maybe the survivors. But it's a devastating scenario where it shouldn't be that case.
As I mentioned, the FBI took over what Othram had started on December 10th of 2022, but the Middlemans had determined the suspect was in Pennsylvania.
Kristen, tell me how far you took this
Thank you.
with the genealogy work.
We were able to complete the genealogy, bringing in the ancestry and all the matches that were there. And the tree that we turned over to law enforcement with our SNP profile to start the target testing is a tree that Kohlberger would be found on.
Is a tree that Kohlberger would be found on. Take us through it.
Pennsylvania.
Kristen, tell me how far you took this with the genealogy work.
We were able to complete the genealogy.
If Bella was to see this body language, she would say that she firmed up her lip
Determined the suspect was in Pennsylvania.
right here.
Kristen, tell me how far you took this with the
Is preventing her from saying something that she wants to say.
genealogy work.
We were
Bella's wheelhouse right here. She should do the body language on this.
able to complete the genealogy.
Looks away, up and right, presses, thinks a little bit before she's about to say what she's about to say.
Bringing in the ancestry and all the matches that were there. And the tree that we turned over to law enforcement with our SNP profile to start the target testing is a tree that Kohlberger would be found on.
And it was his.
Is a tree that Kohlberger would be found on. Well, was he found on it? What does that mean? Anyways, I just cannot believe, because where is this tree? Because there was no tree that was turned over to law enforcement, to then the defense. That's what they were asking for all the time, is where's the work? Who did the work? Where's the person's work? Why was it all a secret? What databases were you in? I mean, she's not a scientist. She's the publicist. No, Tony, that's not true at all. That's not true at all. Not one bit. That's wrong. She's not the publicist for it either. That's not true.
His family. You said you found somebody that was like of Italian, had some Italian heritage
So-
in Pennsylvania,
So
correct?
how this yes, and how this technology works is you give law enforcement that at this generation and this family, these could be the people that could be possible matches to this. And then they figure out, did any one of those have the type of weapon that was used in the crime scene registered? Did they own the type of car that was seen at the crime scene? Were they in Idaho at the time of the murder or wherever the murder might have happened? And then they contextualize that and decide who is the most likely suspect. And they go about target testing for that.
The tech
And all of that's great. I think that all of that's great. Okay, I do think that IgG would deter people that are first-time crime offenders to think twice, because we don't need your system. We don't need your DNA in the system for CODIS. We can get it some other way. But what everybody's feeling, the big picture on here, is that it wasn't put in the probable cause affidavit, and instead a bunch of fucking lies were. That's the problem. That's the problem for me. And if they're going to do it, like I just said, you don't just one day decide that with a bunch of agencies together at a round table that we're all going to collectively go against our oath and write up a probable cause affidavit that's lies. And so, like, that's the problem. For me, it's not Othram. It's not what they do. It's nothing like that. It's that people literally, this should have been said, that this was utilized and put in a probable cause affidavit as they've done in the past. Because this is the only way they got to him. It's not like there's nothing else.
Technology that Othram uses is typically used in cold cases, but the Chapins would like to make the technology more accessible to other families in their position. They also believe it would have been helpful had the use of the technology in the case been more widely publicized in the very beginning.
Thank you. See, everybody has to listen. Like, this is a really, they're not out there. This are really good statements.
And I don't know. I think you have to be careful about that because I still respect the gag order and the reason why there wasn't information going out. But at the same time, like, for example, the affidavit that was released.
There you go. Yes, Stacy. Bingo. This is why people need to stop writing in chat all these ridiculous comments and listen. Listen, Stacy Chapin is over here saying, yeah, why wasn't it just put in the probable cause affidavit that you wanted to spread far and wide? Like, what are you doing? But we all know why.
Right? If the one point on the DNA would have said in a sentence, Othram tested and identified the perpetrator, or it's the perpetrator's DNA on the knife sheath. That doesn't solve the crime. We still need all of law enforcement to do that. But I think it would have really, it would have eased a lot of people's, not only families' minds, kids' minds.
It's not easing anybody's anything. That's the law enforcement side of it. Like, we're talking about a probable cause affidavit. It has to be truthful. And Nick Balance is over here telling Payne and Mowry to write in that the phone shut off at a time that it didn't, and they knew that it didn't. Okay? Because they wanted to have that connection to the white car that was seen on the camera at Nevada Way. Okay? And but Stacy gets it enough to that she knows that if this would have just been in the probable cause affidavit, it would have, she's saying, solved a lot of issues. And what my comment to Stacy is Stacy, you should really think why it wasn't. Why couldn't they put it in the probable cause affidavit? Because they didn't do stuff the right way. And they were worried about what? If we put this in the probable cause, everything, it's basically like it's a catch-22. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. If you truly look at this case from the whole outside in, because then what they ended up going with, which was lies in a probable cause affidavit, even if you put that in there, then you're going to talk about, yeah, we use databases that we shouldn't have used. Okay. Yes, the PCA is not, that's how you say that you arrested the man, and that's how you develop probable cause. And none of it's true. The smallest amount of 19 pages is true. And my thing is that if you can do this when the nation is watching, when the world is watching, what the fuck are y'all doing in cases when I can't even get 200 people to show up to talk about a black man that was 20 years old at the time, and then 22 when you violated the shit out of his rights, our rights. And then his lawyers didn't even open up the discovery, but had no problem taking all of this money off of a church and a family. Happens every day.
It would have also quieted some social media spirals that went kind of crazy.
Do you think, looking back, maybe the gag order wasn't the right move?
No,
because the defense wanted it.
Wait,
I didn't have any.
the defense wanted the gag order. The defense saw the PCA and was like, oh my God, all they're going to continue to do is push this probable cause affidavit, which is lies. What other lies are they going to come up with? This is why we need a gag order, because it's all lies. Dude, what?
Problem with the gag order.
Yeah. But you would like this technology available to people, other
Absolutely.
families in your
Oh,
position.
Anybody.
Everybody should be using this technology, you guys. I don't want these lazy, dumb detectives on cases. You want IGG to be used. Trust me. Okay? There's a difference. Okay? We use it properly. We use it and we document it properly. Anybody who's saying that you don't want to use IGG, you're nuts. Okay? IGG, there's no issues with it. Okay? The issues come when you truly aren't doing the things that you're saying that you're doing. That's when the issues come. And I talked about this last night. Wear a body cam. Have a camera, okay? And when we're transporting evidence, when we're a lab is taking over something, if you want to start IGG from the rip, then they have to start with the item. They don't start with a vial that was extracted from somebody else. And there's no. You want to start IGG from the rip, because normally it comes in at cold cases, which is 10, 20, 30 years down the road. Okay. And it's normally on something that hasn't been tested yet for DNA. And they're like, here, can we pick up DNA off of this old bra, and we got, with the advancements, we found DNA on the clasp of the bra. Okay. So it's, everything should be done where it's 2025. It was 2022 then. We have this amazing technology that there should never not be a camera on you working on the product. Whatever it is that you're doing, we have cameras on our bank tellers watching our money, but we're not going to have cameras on people working on something like this. You want to see that the extraction came from that item that they're claiming that it came from, and not from thin air, right? So why aren't we video recording all of this shit? And then you're going to have the date, the timestamp of when this truly happened. You're going to have the transport of the evidence. You're going to have somebody that has a body cam on that's putting it where it needs to be when you're collecting it, when you're transporting it. I mean, every part about this should be documented. And we don't live in 1980 anymore. We don't live in 1970 anymore. We live in 2025. So, and then the chain of custody matters. If you didn't wear a body cam when you did any of the work moving forward, your fucking shit ain't getting in, bitch. It doesn't matter. It's out. No judge. It's across the board. You didn't record everything that you did. It's out. It is out. How hard is that? It's out. You want to talk about evidence? It's out. You're not using it. And we, the people, can make that happen because we, the people, ultimately become the jury. The integrity of the investigation, if it's not there, it goes. That's how you get people to change. You don't reward shitty performances, okay? If you go to a concert and you spend $100 and literally they perform for 45 minutes, had 3 breaks, okay, are you going to go blast it on social media how much fun you have and you can't wait to spend another $100 to hear 4 songs because they took all these breaks? No. You don't reward shittiness. So stop doing it in cases. And yes, the sad thing about it is there's probably going to be people that are guilty because of it. But guess what? It's the only way that it will change.
Yeah.
Everybody should have access to this.
How do you want that message to get out? Like how would you like, how are you going to work with Kristen to maybe
Well, we're trying to define that right now, right? But again, like in our case, using it as an example, if the affidavit, or just the families just knew that, there has been 100%, that the DNA has been, the perpetrator has been identified by DNA on the case with Othram, and that's all that's a pretty good piece of information to go forward with.
That information was not put in the probable cause affidavit because law enforcement treats it as a tip, but the gag order prevented anyone from talking about it publicly.
That is okay, Angelina Levy, I love you to death, but that is not why it wasn't put in there. Because if anybody does their research, you go and you can check this. Go and search how many cases out there prior to the Idaho4 murder case have used and put in their probable cause affidavits to arrest somebody that they used IgG to catch them. It's in there. They couldn't put it in this one because they violated their own goddamn policy when they went into the fucking databases that they weren't allowed to based on the interim policy. And they didn't want it to affect how they developed probable cause. Okay. So then they made up this other fucking way that they got probable cause, acting like they didn't use IgG. Acting like they did all these other things, and it's what led them to Brian Kohberger. Read the probable cause. And then when you actually get these people on the stand and they're over here admitting, because then they had to tweak everything. Nick Balance knew that the phone didn't shut off at 2:47. Why are you saying that it did? That's a lie. You know that it didn't shut off until 2:53. But why would that lie be so important? Because you're trying to put the phone in this white car traveling at the same time in the same area. And if you have the phone and you use the rest of the handoffs, that phone is going the opposite way that the car is then going after the point of 2:47 in the morning. And it's the burden's on the state to explain why Brian Kohberger's DNA is actually there and on that sheath. Okay? That's the state's burden. And they want to say, oh, because he's the killer. That's why his DNA is on there. Well, okay. So then what would be your answer to the DNA that's on the sheet that's mixed in with the blood of the victims? What's that? Is that your killer too? Who doesn't match Brian Kohberger? You see how your argument then fails? See how you don't have a strong argument there? So that's where your argument like just blows up. It's like, wait, what? Because his DNA is on the sheath, he's the killer. Okay, well, what about this dude's DNA that's mixed in with the blood of the victims on the sheath? Who's that? Is he just a watcher? I mean, like, that's where the argument comes in cross-examination of where the defense would be talking about things like that. But depending on how that all got introduced, and if you have the shot caller like Hippler, when you're making objections and Hippler's just like sustained, or overruled, depending on what side of the coin you're on, then that's when that sucks. And let's not forget the most important question that nobody asked Othram here. Othram, did you receive the sheath? And the answer is no, we didn't. We didn't do anything with the sheath. It was already extracted. Idaho State Police Lab, they did the extraction. And that is what has to change if you're going to use IgG off the rip. in my opinion. Okay. It needs to all be recorded. And it needs to, that lab, Othram, should have been knowing that, hey, here's the item of evidence. And then Othram's going to tell you, well, we don't develop STR. Okay, well, what? So the Idaho State Police lab developed the STR sample, put that into CODIS, and then that vial, that sample was then not the sheath, but the vial was then taken to Othram, and then that's what they tested to make the SNP, which is the SNP. So if you were to ask Othram one simple question, which would be, isn't it true that you have no idea where the sample that you tested came from? And the answer is, yeah, that's correct. So they could tell you, like, you didn't physically do anything. You were given to in a vial, right? Yes. And you have no idea where that vial came from, correct? That's correct. Were you there? Were you at the Idaho State Police lab? No. So again, they're going to have to tweak this to the point that, yeah, I think Othram, if Idaho State Police lab plans on using Othram to do any IgG work, that they should be there from the start of it, which means a lab member from Othram better get their ass to Idaho State Police lab, right? To witness it. Right? But that's the question that you would ask on cross-examination of Othram. And it's just that you don't know where that even came from. Right? Angel, what's good? Thank you. Moto Man, at least use IgG on all the unknown DNA, not just a specifically targeted portion of an object. Now that's $1 million question. Well, again, what they did though is that it wasn't on a specific portion of a target. That's not how that happened. Okay. The Idaho State Police took the sheath, okay, and then they worked on the sheath, which is why it was imperative to listen to the proceedings that were happening during the course of leading up to trial. And they totally botched it when they said, the girl was asked, where did you swab the sheath? She flubs that. Well, wait, didn't you guys do fingerprinting too? Oh yeah, so we left this area for that. And so we did this area and we did and she's like, well, I wasn't the one that did it, but I read the lab report and whatever. But they were muffling their where this was done, where was this pulled from. And what Ann Taylor was basically getting at was, well, the 3 mixtures, where was that at? Which was blood. So, which was Kaylee's blood, Maddie's blood on the DNA sheet. And then inside that mixture was a male. And that unknown male does not match Brian Koberger. So whose DNA is mixed in with the blood of your 2 victims upstairs in a bed? And I would think if I was a prosecutor, right, I'd want to see whose that DNA was, because I'd wanted to eliminate that in terms of like if Maddie had somebody in her bed, okay, because she was hooking up with them. And the last time Maddie, let's say in college, you washed your sheets, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, who was in her bed for like over the past 2 weeks? But then how bad does that look though? That, okay, now you've identified this other male and his DNA is mixed in with the blood. Okay. And so I'm over here of the standpoint of if it's invisible DNA, you didn't know that it was there because you couldn't see it. The blood isn't invisible. So you know that there's stuff there. And so when you're testing that, I want the dates of that. I want the dates on here's these the mixture? How was it separated? And then what did you do once you found out that you had an unknown male that did not match Brian Koberger? Or at the time, I want to take this back, that did not match the profile of where the single source DNA sheath was, or sample was on the sheath. Okay. So your single source by itself, that's unknown male, what was it? A. And then you have another unknown male that was in the mixture of the blood on the sheath. And those two do not match each other. So you would ask somebody on the stand, did you guys not care? Why wouldn't that be? And then they're going to tell you why it doesn't matter, or why they didn't think it mattered. And I'm of the opinion like, wow, that doesn't matter. And then the defense's theory is that, well, doesn't that mean that there could be potentially more than one suspect? And didn't you guys collect all these people's DNAs that you were during the course of 7 weeks and even after 7 weeks? And what did you do with the DNA that you collected from these persons that you were interviewing? And then for the jury to hear, we did nothing with them. How awesome is that? Yeah, but what Ann Taylor was trying to ask them, Heather, is that the date of that is, did you ever do like, what type of comparative test did you do to see if it matched other stuff at the scene that you already had labeled as unknown male, whatever? And I think she was trying to trap them into saying that, did you guys even attempt to do that? What's your protocols on that? But nobody wants to talk about any timelines, and it just amazes me that why can't we have a timeline on any of this? You know? When someone tries to hide a timeline from you, that's a problem. I don't care. It could be in babysitting. You know what I mean? Hey, what'd you do with my kid when you babysat? And there's just this big gap of time that they're not talking about. It's like, okay, well, what'd you do between 3 and 6, you know?
Othram's work only became known publicly through court documents much later on in the case.
I'm not criticizing anybody. There is no criticism. There has been, but not from our family. You know, we have always supported everybody that was working on our case. But even just that tidbit of information, you know, you'd go
I mean, just not from our family. Like, that's a call out. Like, oh, there's been criticism, just not from our family. I don't know why Anjanette Levy clipped that and put that right here in the breakdown. I don't know that that's not good. I don't think that's a good look. But
through the next 2 years just a little bit easier, knowing that that's pretty solid evidence in the case. Still takes everybody else. But that little piece of knowledge is comforting, I guess, for lack of a better word.
No, it's true. And to me, this.
And now remember this, guys. The 1112 camera, okay? I don't think that it was getting in. I think it's inadmissible. There's no chain of anything with that video. We went over it in the docs numerous times. I mean, that video has more issues than Candace and Bridget. Okay, there's a lot of issues over there too. Speaking of which, people ask me if I'm gonna look at. Dude, I would talk about that Candace stuff all day. I just literally don't want to deal with all the fucking crazy people. Maybe I'll just do member only lives with that or something. But so talking about the white Elantra, and you guys, there's a chart with 7 different cars that were charted from the FBI. And that's what Ann Taylor and her team were asking, like, when did you guys determine that it was a white Elantra versus the 7 charts that were given? And which one are you going off of again? Oh, wait, you made the description off of the Ridge Road camera, which is not in the crime scene area. Technically, if that's what you're going to consider the crime, that's not. Sorry.
Technology obviously works. We're sitting underneath a, entire column of victims that have gotten answers, perpetrators that have been caught, right? And it works in cold cases, but it works even easier in real-time cases because the DNA is fresh. You're not looking at DNA that was in an ocean for 100 years or burnt or left in a sewage tank. You're looking at something that came from yesterday's crime scene. That's incredible. And the fact that it worked in this case and we were able to give Stacy's family and the other families the answers that they needed, get him off the street before he committed that next crime is great. But it could work for every case real time. And there really shouldn't be an excuse for not using it. Law enforcement uses any camera that might be anywhere near a crime scene to see what might have happened at the crime scene. They use any eyewitness that was at a crime scene to ask them what they saw so they could piece pieces together. Why don't they use all the information they can get from a DNA at the crime scene the same way? We're not giving you the answer. We're giving you that investigative information about who left DNA at the crime scene. And then law enforcement comes in and they contextualize that within their investigation. And so why are we omitting a very important part of the information up front? Because there's no funding, there's no precedent, there's no method, but we're creating all of that. And so I think Stacey and I will go create that, yes, with Ethan at the forefront of that movement, because in his honor, I hope that there is no case that sits at a dead end in a contemporary investigation, because that's when it's most critical to catch that person real time, because they're going to commit that crime again. They're not going to stop. Most crime is serial. We all know that.
Stacey said throughout the case, they really only had the information that the public had, but she said prosecutors and police always answered their questions.
I thought the prosecutors were great in telling us what they could tell us. I never questioned the fact that they couldn't. We had to we've said it, we had to let the prosecutors do their job, and our job was parents. You guys do, and we were told from the very beginning, it's going to take a long time. You're kind of at the hands of the defense to make sure that it goes through all of the stages that it has to go through. And so we decided, okay, that we're not going to let that piece, something that we cannot control, impact how we feel about moving forward.
Koberger was arrested in the early morning hours of December 30th, 47 days after the murders. I asked Stacey Chapin what it was like to get that call. It was around 11 p.m. Pacific time, University of Idaho.
Honestly, for us, it's probably different because we have the only kids that were headed back to university. I mean, you have to understand, by the time we put the kids back in school, we had 60 days. So the call, we'd made a decision the kids were going back, but Maisie was starting to be like, I don't know if it's right to go back if we do not know who this person is. And behind the scenes, Jim and I were like, that's a valid concern, right? I mean, and so for us, it was a relief.
See, listen to that. Exactly. She's just saying what every parent was thinking. I'm not going to send my kid back to school if there's not an arrest and where they're not going back after Christmas. Right? Because who would? I wouldn't send my kid there. They don't know who's this person. Like, wait, what's going on? Like, they don't know anything, right? And so here, boom, an arrest, December 29th, going in, December 30th, right? And what was that for? You guys, they were premature on doing that because of money, which could potentially have ruined the prosecuting the case. You guys get that? That's where all this is stemming from, is that they were choosing the university's money. That's insanity. The University of Idaho only gives a fuck about money. And if they tell you otherwise, they a damn lie. Hence why, come on, I want to go through these emails. I want to see all the emails that have Kaylee's name in them and fundraising, and I want to see how much money was raised in these kids' name and where this money is going. Right, Heather? Yep, that's what we all said. That's why they rushed an arrest. Even the politicians were saying Moscow needed an arrest before school went back. 150%. 150%. And that should just be like eye-opening to everybody. You know, they have no problem taking your tuition, but fuck when something happens to you. And that's why it goes back, and I'm going to talk about it, is remember back on college campuses when nobody wants to talk about sexual assault and all these sexual assault cases that were purposely not being wrote up or reported as such so that they could control the numbers. When you would look at the numbers and you have to report all this stuff, and is your campus a safe campus? Remember back in the day? I'll break that down on a separate live because it's a touchy subject.
The step in the process that moved us forward.
Yeah. It was just a huge relief that they have a suspect.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
And the kids, was there ever back?
Nope.
Because they had support with their friends.
There was just what else what else, you know, it's two 20-year-olds, right? And we'd had 60 days together because the university released them from school, gave them the grades that they had on that day. And, you know, you're still sitting around. What have we accomplished?
I wondered how that happened. But what if you were a student that was like, I was planning on doing really good because I'm just that person. Like, hey, I was just totally slacking, but I always kill it on my finals, and I need to, you know, you cannot give me the grade that I have right now. You know, they were just like, we're going to give people whatever the hell they want because we cannot have any bad press. I would have been getting A's. I would have been demanding A's from that university. I wouldn't have been able to sleep over there. Can you imagine sleeping? Can you imagine living over there on King Road after this would have happened? You're going to tell me that you're just going to go to sleep on nights by yourself? No way. Not when you're 19, 20, 21, 22. That shit would be scary, and it should be scary.
You know? So we had to go back and finish what we started. We spent a lot of time as a family discussing what that looked like. But that was really the only answer. You're going to go, you know, go. And they graduated in May. And the greatest for me as a mom, part of the story is that from that, what I consider the lowest part of our life, our kids went on and graduated with honors, which speaks to their, resilience. You know, their resilience, you know, to the end of it. So they're amazing kids.
Yeah. The Chapins have worked to make some good come out of Ethan's murder. They've founded the Ethan Smiles Foundation in his memory and raised money to award scholarships to other kids.
Yep. So they'll send kids to school. See, I think that this is great. I'm sorry, but you can choose many of paths when something tragic happens. And the Chapins are controlling their kids' legacy. You get it? And I don't think there's anything wrong with it because I could tell you what you would not want. Do you want the university controlling your kids' legacy?
Is there anything you'd like to say about that and about Ethan? What do you want people to know about Ethan?
Such a good kid. It's hard, you know, it's hard because you know, it's hard to know. He was just an amazing human. He loved everybody. He had touched so many lives. We used to say, if we could touch I would hope to touch as many lives in my lifetime that Ethan touched in 20 years. He just was that kid. He was amazing. So we created a foundation to help other kids, and it's been amazing. I mean, it's really something to be able to scholarship kids in Ethan's name.
It is. It is. We did that for a teammate back in the day. And it is. And you want to give the scholarships to, again, for that, I believe for that, it's kids that are going off into college from high school. I believe the last time I read it, I want to read up more on it, but you're in control of that. Like,
How many kids have you awarded?
It's 83 right
83 kids have received
now, and we've it's $105,000. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I assume through the tulips and
Everything.
donations, and I saw you were selling
Lassie babies.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a very Pacific Northwest thing. And each one is a hand blown piece of glass.
$105,000. Is that total? I thought it was something like each kid gets like, I want to say it's 15 or 1,800 bucks. I could be wrong though. I don't know. I don't know if their kid received the first scholarship with that. That was something different. The university did something for Ethan and the other kids, and that's what one of the kid received, and it was from Sigma Chi. So no, if you're listening to what Annie Potts just said, that's not accurate. Sorry. But the Ethan's Smile, that scholarship stuff, the schools, whether it was Sigma Chi, I think it was Ethan's brother that received something from Sigma Chi.
That's a huge fundraiser for us. We do a huge auction in November. And then we just have, there's some foundations out there that have watched us, I guess in various different places that have made some very generous donations. So it's amazing.
Yeah. I do ever feel like
I'm saying if I was in any of these parents' shoes, you're damn right that I'd want to be doing that for my kid and not the university or some whack on the internet. Okay. So anybody out there, Hunter received the first $5,000 scholarship from the Sigma Chi. Yeah. Not the tulips. Okay. Totally different because it's kids coming out of college or coming out of high school, going to college. Sigma Chi did whatever they did in his honor, and they gave that to Hunter. So, I know that you're okay with that, Miss Potts. That's why I said it, because I saw that you wrote it. And I'm like, if you're listening to that dipshit Annie Potts, I'll tell you what. Disclaimer, Annie Potts is anything but a dipshit, okay? I can just mess with Annie. But I'll be damned if the university is going to be out there using my kid's name to raise them hand over fist money. Okay. Meanwhile, we can't even get out of your little area. You're telling me to go do FOIA requests to find out how my kid was murdered on your campus. Have y'all lost your minds? But yet you're here making hand over fist thousands upon thousands of dollars to use my kid's name to raise money for your university for what? Yeah, no thanks. No, I'm not gonna people can. That's just not happening. So I just can't believe that. Oh, there you go. The first recipient of the Ethan Smile Scholarship was Reese Gardner. Come on down. Let's see, Reese Gardner. I like the name. Yeah. A lot of interesting moments coming up, though. Hitler's got sitting on his plate right now, batch number 2 to sort through. I want to show you guys a couple clips. Okay. Here. Now I want you guys to look at some timestamps of these clips. What is the date that we all first saw for the first time Molly McMichael's name in the body cam? Okay. Well, in May 16th of I want you to just look at this. What is this thing doing? Okay. Molly McMichael. May 16th, 2025 is when the name is said, but you need to see how and why. So let me pull up a different video. I'm going to bring in Crazy. If you know, you know. Oh, where is it? Okay, check this out. Okay, so I do my homework and I grabbed a screenshot of this back in the day. Now, this video is titled Molly McMichael Identified as the DoorDash Driver, but it wasn't always titled Molly McMichael Identified as the DoorDash Driver. Okay. And if you go look at this lovely video date, May 16th, 2025. So there's no way to get around the fact that this video was 100% made on that date. But you are able to change the video titles of videos after the fact. And so unless you can go back and get a screen grab of when it first was up and what the title was then, you wouldn't know that. Check this out.
Oops, we've got a mix-up to clear up about the DoorDash driver. So here's what happened. We thought we'd cracked the code on identifying the Dasher. Court docs gave us the Dasher ID, and we thought we identified a Delilah and a Millie using some tricks on the DoorDash site. We have now used another method, and we have discovered a Molly McMichael registered instead. We had a mix-up with names, and it turns out there's an alias situation going on. Apparently the same ID is using 2 different names. Molly McMichael for dashing, and actually Adela LeBarrett for receiving. Molly McMichael lives just south of Moscow and has been dealing with some seriously intense stuff. Talk about a tough break. Now, we can't spill all the tea, but let's say there's been some major drama. Court cases, registration issues, you name it. And get this, there's even more juicy details we're dying to share, but the judge has put his foot down on any leaks. So for now, we're left hanging, wondering what's really going on in Molly's world. Stay tuned, folks. Something tells me this story is far from over.
Okay, this happens before she puts out and uses the body cam from Molly, okay? So that's all AI. It doesn't matter. I want you guys to pay attention to the dates. May 16th. Fuck what is in the video. All of her videos are AI. That's not the important part. The important part is May 16th is the date of this video. There's no way to change that date on the video. There is a way, though, to change the title of a video and to put Molly McMichael in the title. Okay. May 16th, 2025. Now check this out. If you go and you look, you're going to see right here, I'm Molly. Okay. Again, you could make a different thumbnail for your stuff after the fact. Okay. But here, this is the video.
This truck
first saw Molly McMichael getting arrested, but she actually grabbed it, or he, who's ever behind this channel, they actually got it from another person that makes body cam videos. This date is June 13th, 2025. Now put that date in your back pocket, okay? June 13th, 2025.
Jimmy? Jordan put me over again.
You ready?
Yeah, I'm in Walmart parking lot.
Everything goes on at Walmart.
The tags, and now they're
Then, okay. Ready. So May 16th, 2025. June 13th, 2025. Then an email will go out on June 16th and June 19th where Steve and Shannon Gray write the prosecutor an email. Steve is on the 16th. Shannon Gray's is on the 19th of June. Now, I want to go to... And how we find out about this is because Ann Taylor does a FOIA, or not a FOIA request, but Ann Taylor does a discovery request that just got unsealed. And it says that I was looking for Molly. No, I'm just kidding. She says that she is looking for the emails associated if Steve or Shannon or anybody from the family had wrote any emails with the state. And the state responds by saying, like, we're not going to be playing your games, but here, we'll give you this. But we didn't even discover it until July 7th. Hold on. Oh, here it is. So... All right. So check this out. I was putting together some dates and timestamps. So here, Ann Taylor says, copy of all arrest reports, charging documents, and videos for Molly Marie McMichael from June 1st of 2022 to May 31st, 2025. Okay. And I thought it was interesting that she's stopping at May 31st, 2025, right? And so we have this, they said, and we're sending it to you, but we did not discover it until 7/7/2025. So when they put this in and they were asking for it on 6/25, they're saying that they didn't even have it. We never got it. We didn't even know that it existed until 7/25. Then in the same request, she says, hey, I want a copy of any emails that you've had with the Gonsalves family, their attorney or representatives, and the Latah County Prosecutor's Office relating to Molly McMichael. Okay. Now check this out. If you go back to these dates, in May, Translucent puts out a video saying that Molly McMichael didn't just have one name, but had two names, depending on if she was the receiving end of a DoorDash or if she was taking DoorDash. So if she was receiving DoorDashes, like if she wanted to get a DoorDash because she wanted someone to bring her food, she went by a different name, a different alias. Okay, but if she was delivering the food, she had a different account and she went under Molly McMichael. Okay. Then I did a video. If I go to my videos and I type in Molly McMichael, 'cause On June 13th, 2025, Idaho4, state's star witness, Molly McMichael arrested for OVI DUI and had meth in truck, allegedly. Let me get to it. Okay. But where is this? Oh, here. Wait. Look at this leak. Boom. It's a puffy.
Why would you?
Right there. You guys, they had this the whole time. Look at that picture. Okay. See that picture? Does that look familiar to you? These are crime scene photos. These aren't like Dateline leaks from freaking the internet. This is 100% what you see that it is. Okay. There is no signed deal. There is no, this case is over. Okay. Remember? Look at, this is from the Prime Video, the official trailer for the Prime Video. Remember this? This is a reenactment, right? But this right there, next thing I talk about in this video is I go to Molly. Right. When did I start talking about? Here we go. Here.
Where do your parents live? Okay. Are you under the care of a doctor or dentist?
And then ever since becoming a, I've actually got two cases here with this.
How do you spell that? Didn't take any.
Where do I make a comment? Latah County Prosecutor William Thompson Jr. told the court the evidence showed Nisbet did shoot Pat McMichael multiple times with a disconcertable amount of times between rounds. Thompson said an identical twin brother, Robert Shad, I'm sorry, how many wives did he have? I thought Amy S. Huff-Stutler die. Yeah. Ooh. Get out of here. Did I say that out loud? Is she just like in a lot of pain? Okay, I'm gonna be searching for this, but it was either in this video or then the next day, because then I talk about translucent, and I'm like, dude, who the fuck is behind the channel Translucent, right? And I said, you know what somebody told me once is if you want to troll and you want to be a really, really good troll, you have to troll yourself. Okay. So I make this comment about, well, God, for as much shit as Translucent talks about the Gonsalves family, it's like this video that she put out with the body cam is what made all of this shit blow up. So much so that it wasn't the body cam being put out by that body cam channel. It was the Translucent channel that puts it out, and literally we show it over here. I talk about that fucking crazy ass. And I make a comment about, well, I would love to know who's behind that channel, Because I find it hard to believe that Steve would be trolling himself with that channel, but because it's so freaking insane, the shit that she puts out. Or I say she. I don't know who, if it's a guy or a girl. We have our suspicions, but this channel is insane. This channel is off its rocker. Because it's like stuff like this. When she did, where is that stupid one? Here. Oh, wait, no. God damn it. Hold on. I gotta go back to sharing crazy. Be prepared. Okay, here. If you actually look at these videos, I was like, dude, who in the world is putting out this garbage? But here, she dedicated, no, Lana, we weren't tipped off. After that, because of what I said, I was like, well, I don't know how Translucent found this video.
All right, let's talk about how I figured out who DoorDash driver was. No, I didn't hack the app or get some tip off from law enforcement. It's way simpler than that.
I didn't say that you did.
Go to the DoorDash site, click on any profile from the reviews. Now go to the Idaho.
Look at this, because she's trying to troll. Watch.
Go to the DoorDash site, click on any profile from the reviews.
Kevin F. What a troll.
Now go to the Idaho portal. Find the document that has the DoorDash information. Let's first start with Zana. Plug in her Dasher ID here and hit enter.
You don't know if that's Zana's.
On the right side, you have the Dasher ID. Pasting that in the URL gives a Dalila B.
We have now used another
Watch this.
method, and we have discovered a Molly McMichael registered in.
That would actually mean that Xana was the orderer, which would be Dahlia B. Ready? Listen to what she's saying, how to do it.
It's way simpler than that. Go to the DoorDash site, click on any profile from the reviews. Now go to the Idaho portal. Find the document that has the DoorDash information. Let's first start with Zana. Plug in her Dasher ID here and hit enter.
Now, if you did that and you're saying that's Xana's, the Dasher ID, watch this.
On the right side, you have the Dasher ID. Pasting that in the URL gives a Dalila B.
We have now used another.
So she's saying I was able to punch it in and then Xana came up. Then I'm punching in the Dasher's ID and she's trying to say that when she did that, this Dahlia B name came up.
Method, and we have discovered a.
The Dasher ID. Pasting that in the URL gives a Dalila B.
We have now used another method, and we have discovered a Molly McMichael registered instead. We had a mix-up with names, and it turns out there's an alias situation.
Where's that information? Do you guys see that anywhere here? Okay.
Going on.
Anyways. I do not think it's ironic that on what date was it? Why did Ann Team ask for emails with the name Molly McMichael with Shannon Gray and with let me tell you why. Because they know that Steve's following the case and is paying attention. And if there are emails and if there are transactions, then she can ask for it. And if whatever the state is telling the families, Anne would then be able to get a hold of it if they are holding out on information on what you're telling us, that you didn't receive our shit, or how come we have no idea about Molly McMichael supposedly saying all of this shit. So these were different ways that Anne was going about trying to track down if the prosecution was holding back Brady. Okay. But I think it's beyond crazy that the question I had asked this fuck is where did you come across that you just miraculously came across Molly McMichael's video? Because if you actually go to the body cam channel that actually put it up a long ass time ago, it had been there. It had been there. What made Molly McMichael, I mean, Translucent, find that video at that specific time and put it out to the world? Then I fucking give it airspace, and then I show how this channel is the most fucked up channel ever with these videos. All right. Wild shit being said on these videos. Like straight up crazy talk. Like bad. Where's this one that I'm like, yeah, what's the we found Steve G's block what is this?
And now it's finally time for the job that pays $10 million per year.
Wait a minute, get it how you live it.
Well, playing football may be one way to make 10 million. Ever heard of the Omerta? Picture this, 10 million vanishing into thin air. Poof, gone. But here's where it gets juicy. Rumors are swirling faster than a blockchain transaction. Some say it was an inside job. Others whisper about hackers with skills that'd make NASA jealous. But the real kicker? The name Omerta itself. It's the mafia code of silence. Coincidence? I think not. So, was it a mastermind plot or just a crypto crash catastrophe? The truth might be crazier than fiction.
Buckle up, space cadets, and we're blasting off into the crypto cosmos. Picture this, you're floating through the void, but instead of planets, massive Ethereum moons loom ahead. Hex stars twinkle in the distance, their smart contract constellations forming intricate patterns. Suddenly, a pulse chain asteroid belt appears. Watch out for those meme-powered space rocks. As we navigate deeper, we encounter the elusive dark matter of privacy coins, barely visible yet incredibly powerful. In this vast crypto universe, every coin has its own orbit, its own gravity, pulling in investors you may not want to meet in person. In this space race, there's no oxygen, only pure digital energy fueling our journey. Ready to explore this new financial frontier?
Okay, so I'm like, fuck out of here. Then I said, what is this shit? Where is this sick shit?
He himself, not law enforcement, he says conflicting things constantly. And he says things that are very odd over and over again. I've worked a lot of different cases. I spoke to a lot of different law enforcement. In fact, one
on this matter. However, as this FBI agent says, Steve G behaves very bizarrely. Let's look at an email he sent a lawyer YouTuber recently. And let's see if you agree this example is odd. Steve wrote, "We're aware that neither Kaylee nor Maddie made a call to 911. I'd need to double check with the girls as they were the ones who accessed their accounts." This is bizarre because Steve is fully immersed into the case. He knows each and every detail. He has hired private investigators. So why would he not be sure if a 911 call was made? Let's think outside of the box. And I mean really outside of the box.
Dylan heard Kaylee say, "There's someone here." Let's assume Kaylee was in her room with the dog. Let's wonder if the man had drugged and raped Maddie many times in the past.
What?
Let's postulate further. He wasn't aware Kaylee was visiting the house that weekend. Now he panics. How can he explain what he's doing to Maddie? Kaylee witnesses him. He ends both of them.
What?
What has he done? He now hears Xana calling out. Should he use the balcony but risk being seen? He decides to end the witnesses downstairs. He doesn't know for sure if Kaylee attempted to call 911. The Gonsalveses are the only family to not receive back the phone by law enforcement. Steve can only rely on call logs which wouldn't show an attempted call. Dylan would later witness a man of 5'10", a much shorter man than Brian Koberger.
The end. The end. What? What did I just hear? Nothing further, says Van Leuven. Yeah. Fucking absolute craziness, okay? Absolute craziness.
Well, we figured out it was intentionally turned off and that his phone was at 100% battery power and that it was a manual power down. So that's a big thing. If your battery dies, it doesn't mean you went out and committed a murder. But the fact that you turned off Wi-Fi, manually turned off your phone was charged at 100%, that you never turn off your phone every single day. I shouldn't say never. It's not normal behavior for Brian Koberger to turn off his phone. He had done it a few times, but it's not like, Brian, if you every single day, your best practice is before bed, you turn off your phone and you turn it on every morning. You would be able to look at your pattern and say, this is normal for Brian. This is not normal. For Brian Koberger, turning off his device like that and disabling Wi-Fi before the murders was 100% abnormal and a huge red flag.
She's comparing him turning off his phone to previous nights, except that is a biased and misguided approach. He went to the surrounding areas of Pullman a few times at night as part of his astronomy and photography hobbies. Rather than compare if he switched off his phone to previous weekdays, a proper approach would have been to compare his patterns for when he went traveling in the weekends. Places without signal, and therefore at times his phone battery would have drained quickly as it tried to find networks.
So immediately when the phone power's back on, that's sort of where the FBI, their CAS team would pick up with cell records to say, all right, now his device is hitting this tower in this area, but the device itself wasn't super busy with files that were changing that we can see now. It was just sort of benign nothingness until around 6 a.m.
Remember the fake news at the time that as soon as he turned on his phone, he connected to a police radio network?
What?
This expert loser has just debunked that.
He ended up speaking with Mother for over...
Wait, when did... What is she talking? When was this ever said that he connected to a what?
He connected to a police radio network? This expert loser has just debunked that.
He ended up speaking with Mother for over 3 hours the day of the murder.
So was it one whole 3-hour call or was it chunks?
The longest one was about an hour and a half. And then there was a 54-minute call and then smaller chunks. But some...
You guys, I have never heard in all the years I've been following this case that Brian's phone ever connected to the police. What? It connected to the police. What?
Remember the fake news at the time that as soon as he turned on his phone, he connected to a police radio network?
No, we don't. What the heck? When was this from? Wait, what? And so what I think is hilarious, she's like, well, anybody that said that back in the day, they just, these expert losers just debunked you. What? God, I'm dead. I'm dead.
This expert loser has just debunked that.
He ended up speaking with Mother for over 3 hours the day of the murder.
So was it one whole 3-hour call or was it chunks?
The longest one was about an hour and a half. And then there was a 54-minute call and then smaller chunks. But some, he could have a 54-minute call, a few minutes would pass, and then another 9-minute call.
And so when you say he cleared or cleaned his device, is that just clearing the browser history, essentially?
Somewhat. Yeah, on the phone, clearing the browser history. On the computer, it was a little bit more. I found the presence on November 16th of a file called Eraser, but he was crafty. And usually you could see, okay, Eraser was run and it wiped these files. I couldn't find that level of detail, but I could see that Eraser was run on November 16th. Could it be from a virus scan or some other scan of software he had on his computer? Sure, but...
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
A lot of people have been talking about this the Mad Greek restaurant where one of the victims worked. Was that in his phone?
It was in the Google Maps cache, which means if you open Google Maps and you search for nearby restaurants, or if you typed, it just shows that he had interest in that restaurant.
It just shows that he had interest in that restaurant.
We do have these call logs, and the one call was 54 minutes leading up until 9 a.m. the day of the murders. And when we said that, someone else correlated it to, well, he was reportedly back at the crime scene around that time. And we didn't know that because we, weren't focused on that piece of the investigation. We weren't aware. But the words that were being spoken would probably speak volumes to everyone as to what was he saying to her as he was, what was he saying to her as he was doing that? As he's driving back towards this crime scene.
Except he didn't drive to the crime scene. The prosecution themselves have recently admitted that without timing advanced records, they couldn't pinpoint Brian's locations. Cy-Ray doesn't believe they didn't have this data, which implies the prosecution actually did know where Brian was, but it was exculpatory for Brian. Court records actually show that he actually went to a cash ATM right next to a dispensary that morning. These experts should never be hired again using the taxpayers' money.
Wait a second. Wait, because now we're going to get into this bomb I'm about to drop. Okay. Where does Translucent get the information that Brian Koberger went to an ATM and withdrew hella cheddar? Because my sources say that Brian Koberger withdrew hella cheddar on November 10th. $1,500. Where does she get her information from? Listen to this right here at the end.
Court records actually show that he actually went to a cash ATM right next to a dispensary that morning. These experts should never be hired again using the taxpayers' money.
These experts should never be hired again. Let's see. This recently dropped. Wait, what is going on? Hold on. 6 seconds. Thank you so much for that video. It says, actual suspect vehicle, Nissan Sentra belonging to Tyler Yelk. That's the name of this video. After I did my Tyler Yelk video. In this video, we expose more evidence against football coach Tyler Yelk. The police and FBI confirmed that Yelk powered down his phone before going to 1122 King Road. But the investigation was dropped because the police chief is friends with them. We found footage showing his Nissan Sentra. What? Okay, then I was like, what is going on here? Then she did this video on the Yelks.
The GPS chip in a phone never truly sleeps, even when the phone is powered down. This is how investigators can track a phone's location. On December 8th, 2022, a friend of Kaylee's named Tiffany dropped a tip to the investigators. She mentioned that Kaylee had a job babysitting for a Vandals football coach named Tyler Yelk. We were able to determine his identity because in the recent ISP documents, it gives his year of birth as 1985. Tyler is the only coach with that birth year. We also found a partly cached Twitter post by Tiffany confirming this. Elis is Tyler's wife, and according to this tweet, Tyler was friends with Jack Ducour's uncle and aunt. According to the docs, Tyler never came forward to indicate Kaylee babysat for them. For Tiffany to drop the tip herself shows that she was suspicious of Tyler. Maybe he was known for making advances on the sorority girls he hired. Or maybe she knew Kaylee and Tyler had an affair. This would align with something Showalter said in that he heard Kaylee was maybe pregnant with someone working for the university. The investigators...
What is she talking about? Where is she getting this from? He, she, I have no idea who the fuck is behind this account. Well, and this is absolutely ridiculous.
Determined that Tyler's phone was at the 1122 King Roadhouse the night of the incident. For him not to come forward is very suspicious.
What?
They also determined he had turned off his phone before going there. Was having a baby with a sorority girl something he couldn't let happen?
What?
After he was interviewed by the cops, Tyler and his family moved away from Idaho, despite both Tyler and his wife having prominent jobs at the university. All right, true crime enthusiasts, buckle up. Remember Bethany's statement? What the F? Why is Zana dressed in all black? Was it really Zana, or could it have been Tyler's wife? We think this was the defense's exculpatory evidence, since Bethany may have witnessed a female walk past her window. Now let's talk about Tyler's distinct accent.
Wait, what? Listen to this fucking shit.
Remember Bethany's statement? What the F? Why is Zana dressed in all black? Was it really Zana, or could it have been Tyler's wife? We think this was the defense's exculpatory evidence.
The defense's exculpatory evidence. Who the fuck is we?
Since Bethany may have witnessed a female walk past her window. Now let's talk about Tyler's distinct accent that we are going to play to you in a second. Could that explain why Dylan didn't recognize the voice saying, "I'm going to help you"? Maybe it wasn't a stranger, just an unfamiliar accent. Think about it. This could flip the whole case on its head. What's your theory? Drop it in the comments and let's crack this case together.
My name's Tyler Yelk, co-defensive coordinator, and I work with...
She put all this out after I had put out stuff about that interview. This has to be satire. No, this is real. This is motherfucking real. This girl, she thinks that this is real. Okay. And I said, how do you know that? Trust me, when I do a video like this, then she'll do a video, whoever this person is, and just answer all of our questions. So this is the list of questions I have. How do you know that Tyler Yelk was driving a Nissan Sentra? It's like
the safety specifically during drill work and practice time from Madison, Wisconsin area, small town.
I'm gonna help you. No, that's 100% the television.
In Arlington, grew up on a dairy farm.
Grew up on a dairy farm. Thanks for watching. What was she talking about?
Tyler. Maybe he was known for making it. Tyler is the only coach with that birth year. We also found a partly cached Twitter post by Tiffany confirming this. Elis is Tyler's wife, and according to this tweet...
Okay, here, hold on. Dude, all the document said is that his phone was turned off. That's it. This is where she takes this.
The GPS chip in a phone never truly sleeps, even when the phone is powered down. This is how investigators can track a phone's location. On December 8th, 2022, a friend of Kaylee's named Tiffany dropped a tip to the investigators. She mentioned that Kaylee had a job babysitting for a Vandals football coach named Tyler Yelk. We were able to determine his identity because in the recent ISP documents, it gives his year of birth as 1985. Tyler is the only coach with that birth year. We also found a partly cached Twitter post by Tiffany confirming this. Elis is Tyler's wife, and according to this tweet, Tyler was friends with Jack Ducour's uncle and aunt. According to the docs, Tyler never came forward to indicate Kaylee babysat for them. For Tiffany to drop the tip herself shows that she was suspicious of Tyler. Maybe he was known for making advances on the sorority girls he hired. Or maybe she knew Kaylee and Tyler had an affair. This would align with something Showalter said in that he heard Kaylee was maybe pregnant with someone working for the university. The investigators determined that Tyler's phone was at the 1122 King Roadhouse the night of the incident.
No, they didn't determine any of this. Where the fuck are you getting that? Why are you fucking putting this shit out there? None of this is true.
For him not to come forward is very suspicious. They also determined he had turned off his phone before going there. Was having a baby with a sorority girl something he couldn't let happen?
What? Dude, this is ridiculous. This is crazy. This is putting the TikToker to shame, right? I cannot even believe this shit. But going back to all of these dates that I was talking about previously, Ann Taylor's asking for these emails with Steve and the lawyer. And here they email because they didn't know this. Nobody knew anything about this Molly McMichael. Okay, Steve emails, Shannon Gray emails. The prosecution tells the world we didn't even discover those emails that they sent us until 7/7/2025. We never even opened up or looked at the emails from Shannon Gray or Steve Gonsalves. And I'm over here just like, wow. And then you hear somebody at CrimeCon saying how, yeah, they always answered our questions and always got back to us. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Here's that. Look at that. They're telling the defense that we never even opened up or looked at or knew that they existed, these emails from Steve on 6/19 and Shannon Gray on 6/16. So I was opposite way. I think I said Steve 16 or whatever. That's 3 days after Crazy here releases the video, right? Because then I put it out there, and I just showed you guys that a second ago because I was like, hey, follow these dates. What's the date that I put the video out there? Then what are the dates of these? And it's like, how does nobody... I'm like, this is crazy. Like, this is absolute craziness. Give a shout out to my boy Outcast is up here. I always love popping in and seeing him on late nights. And then here's another. So all of the stuff that has been turned over so far for all of us that are following along in the batch. Let me make this bigger for you. Okay, so case of interest page, item 1, and then you can see, did I talk about it on a live of mine? And they're all listed up there. And so everyone I've gone through, so I'm filling out the rest of that, but these are the first 43. And so now we're waiting on the next ones. And they're doing it by the month. So 2 months are getting released at a time. Jeez. Sarah says, that's great. Sarah says, I've never even heard of that channel. Looks like some crap my grandma would watch and believe. Anyways, I just think that some of those videos need to come down. They are absolutely ridiculous. Will we get the FBI reports? Dude, trying hard over here. We try. What else? Any questions? Anything? Thank you, Angel. Remember, for 2 months, she's been buying left and right members, gifted memberships. The closest DM and BF get to kids is reminding me of baby goats. Yeah. I think sometimes it's also just like a saying. Brittany Plant, H2O, welcome. And then Angel, like I said, she's been passing out memberships over here. You organized, girl. Oh, very organized over here. Yeah, hit the like button, hit the thumbs down. I don't give a shit. Just hit one of them. You gotta have an opinion. What else? I think that's everything that I wanted to cover. I was looking at some other crazy shit, some coincidences with some dates. Yeah, here. You guys think about this. It was all in one supplemental request. So was 625, what day of the week is that? What day of the week is that? What was June 25th? I'm curious. Anybody know? Was it a Wednesday? Yeah, June 25th, 2025. Was it a Wednesday? Because when Ann Taylor put in her 24 supplemental request for discovery with Exhibit W, all right, it had 441, 442, 443, and 444 on it. And this would be the final supplemental request. And it says copy of all arrest reports, charging documents, and videos from Molly Marie McMichael from June 1st, 2022 through May 31st, 2025. Copy of all email communication. So in the same request, email communication between the Gonsalves family, their attorney, or representative, and the Latah County Prosecutor's Office relating to Molly McMichael. So it's only stuff to do with Molly. Okay. And then 443, copy of all email communications from the Latah County Prosecutor's Office and law enforcement and any other agents relating to Molly McMichael. And then 444 is any updated supplemental reports and or recordings of interviews conducted by law enforcement with Molly McMichael, right? And all of this started. This all started due to whoever the person is that's behind the translucent channel found the body cam channel of a guy that started putting body cams out in 2023 in Washington. And he had uploaded Molly's video back shortly after 2024 when she had gotten in trouble in September. But translucent, and no, nobody for that matter, nobody found it. Nobody found it. Nobody came across it. Nobody speaks about it until this translucent channel puts it out. But a month before that, now pay attention, but a month before she puts it out in June, in May, she made a video knowing that the name of the DoorDash driver, because she says that she reverse engineered to come across that it was Molly McMichael due to the papers that were put out for the case. Okay. And I never even saw that one to even like comment on it until after the fact. But what she found is that depending on if Molly was receiving a DoorDash or if she was actually driving, she had a different name and a different account. And you guys, we've been asking ourselves about the whole thing surrounding DoorDash from the beginning. Now, don't you think it's a little bit crazy that the person that would be the DoorDasher for this murder case isn't just doing everything under the same name, Molly McMichael? She has an alias for if she is receiving DoorDash. That means if she was to order it and somebody was to bring it to her. But when she's doing the door dashing, she has to use her regular name if she wants to get paid, right? You can't be using an alias and thinking you're going to put in to get direct deposits or some shit like that. And so the defense had no idea. The defense was not keeping any tabs on Molly McMichael to be being flagged through any type of, hey, you know that witness, Molly, that was a DoorDash driver? Oh, hey, guess what? She was just pulled over for DUI and meth. I mean, we thought it was suspicious, but you're going to sit here and tell me that the defense had no idea to keep a tab on somebody that could potentially be a confidential informant and to see if their name would be popping up in the system? Don't you think that's crazy? You're telling me that wasn't something, I mean, when did mainstream media start talking about Molly? Let me check out one more date. And now this is Pullman and Pullman Police Department. Okay. So this is the other thing that I think is crazy or weird or suspicious or whatever word you want to use. Pullman clearly helped, right, with everything with this case. But yet they try to make it seem like they didn't, and they don't even use Pullman in the probable cause affidavit, nothing, right? So then Molly McMichael sits down with an officer in 2024 and tells this officer about who's Officer Banks, who was part of helping the Pullman Police Department get everything together to give to Moscow for the evidence with the cameras in the area. And Banks is written on one of the, she picked up a USB from one of the places, rather than I think it was business. I think it was actually the Safe Way. Anyways, so she clearly knows all about Brian Kober. She was involved in it. And then here you're doing an interview and Molly McMichael tells you about the murder and that she's the DoorDash driver and she's the witness. And then she tells you that she saw Brian. And you're going to sit here and tell me you want me to believe that the Pullman Police Department and the Moscow Police Department didn't talk at all about that? That just seemed to, nothing to see here. Banks doesn't say, hey, maybe I should get this to my supervisor and say, hey, the woman I was talking to, she was saying some really weird stuff. But then I went ahead and looked at that probable cause affidavit in the Brian Kohlberg case again, and there was a DoorDash driver, and this is the woman that's saying that she's a DoorDash driver, and she's saying that she saw Brian. She's to testify. Should this be relayed to the Moscow Police Department in some capacity? Don't you think that that's what would have happened? What? Aggie, I have no idea what you're talking about, but you're not correct. Do you want me to play it again for you? She most certainly says that she saw Brian. It's right here. It's between rounds. Ugh.
Okay. It's too large. Couple. You don't work all the time. Did a doctor diagnose that?
She also says it in the there's more to the video. She 1000% says that she saw Brian. The whole point of the story, though, is the moral of the story is it has nothing to do with this. It has to do with the communication between law enforcement. Is that how does this go undetected? I believe personally that it doesn't. Aggie, I know her. You know Molly? Okay. Well, bring Molly up on stage. I'll believe that. Bring up Molly. Bring up Molly. So Molly talked to you about it, Aggie? Then Molly should come out and talk about it. Point being is that the prosecution said the only living person that saw the person was Dylan Mortensen. Then in 2024, this body cam reveals that Molly saw Brian and parked next to Brian. What? It's like
My doctor concludes yes, they're all diagnosed. My husband was murdered in front of me.
what? What's Jordan?
And
Here we go.
her friend
Where did that happen?
in Moscow.
In Moscow? When was that? Who was your husband?
Charles McMichael, he shot me and was dead.
And
Now I have to testify. In front of his kids, so yeah, because I'm a DoorDash driver, so yeah.
you have to testify in which murder case?
Murder case with college girl.
Oh.
Oh my God, she's the DoorDash driver. Oh my God. Wait, her husband was fucking. Well, Aggie says this is not new shit for us that have been in it from the beginning with Molly. Well, what do you mean in the beginning of it with Molly? Are you talking back when her husband was shot? Because that's way back in the day. Are you talking about this case? We've been in it from the beginning in 2022. So, Aggie, I'll be happy to do this for you. Here's a copy of the link. Take the link and you can explain it all. Molly is not making up what happened to her husband. No, she did not make up what happened to her husband. Her husband really was shot and she was there. So there's the link. And I just think it's easier to state whatever it is. Tuesday happy hour. Let's see if I can get that a pen and a pen. And be kind to Aggie. I think that if Molly got railroaded into police, you have not been in this with Molly. Well, I asked you to hit the link. I don't even know who the fuck Molly is. Why would I be in anything with Molly? I'm willing to give Molly a platform to explain what the hell's been going on with Molly's life because I personally think that Molly got herself into some shit and that they want her to say something because The person that Molly says that she saw had blonde hair, spiky reddish blonde hair, and that he was in a tan sedan, and there was nobody else in the car, and he had a collared shirt on. And that's basically the description of Jacob Tisdall, so who is an undercover plainclothes officer that night. I also know that when they pulled over Molly, one of the officers was being a really big jerk to her and says, "Do you got meth in this truck?" And she's like, "What?" I have no idea why that guy would say that to her. And then the other officer was talking to her about that she needs to stop doing drugs. And I thought that was interesting. Yes, afternoon got to her and told her what to say. Interesting. Well, why don't you have Molly hit the link? We've been trying to find Molly for a long time. I'm actually also looking for her friend that took the white truck for a little joyride. Do you know who that is? Let's see this video here. Okay, so I did a video of that. These two are different. Jordan's not talking to her. She was also coming from the wrong way if she was door dashing. So yes, Janelle. There you go. So, where is Aggie? Aggie, you're wrong. Lauren didn't take no fucking truck, car, nothing. Okay, Janelle did. So you can take your little Aggie the fuck ass out of here. I'd love to take trolls and just bust them over my kneecap. Aggie can go. Mods, go ahead and click them out. Gone. There you go. Peace out, Girl Scout. Aggie, tie one on for me. Next. Let me see where's our girl Janelle? Okay. You guys can. In order to print off a new one, you have to have. Okay, so here's when Molly says that she's friends with Bill. Officer Payne.
So I was unable to find anything on the state return, just like you said. All right. So I am going to issue a citation. Now, generally how these work is if you can go to the courthouse and show that at the time you were pulled over, you had current insurance, then.
Can you imagine this? Officer Payne at the time that he's doing this pullover. So when's this one? This is June of 2022.
They sometimes will work with.
Okay, but I want to show you guys something. All right. You guys get 3 doses of me today. Look at this. 3 doses, baby. 6/18/2022. His body cam is already on. Not the dash cam, but his body cam is on. So he hasn't witnessed her driving as a padiddle, like with only one headlight, okay? Or her tail light being out, or whatever the fuck it is. His body cam is already on. So it doesn't make any sense that you usually would click it once you're engaging. And here he's saying he's driving one way, Molly's going the other way, and he then whips a Yui to then go get her to say, hey, yo, guess what? You're light, right? 3 doses. So I thought it was interesting that his body cam is already on way before he sees her vehicle do what it right here. Here's the Yui. Or the lights come on. Where's his little Yui? Payne whips that vehicle. So he's driving, then whips this little. He radios. What is he doing? He's had his lights on for a long time. And then can you imagine this? June of 2022. And so this is the year and the date that they go back to.
Yep, no big deal. I'm Corporal Payne. That's why I stopped you guys. All right.
All right, Corp. This is an impromptu. I want to point out that so if you use them, so when Ann Taylor is asking for, she wants everything to do with June of 2022 to May 31st of 2025. That includes this. So she didn't have this. Was she then going to use it because it shows that she's normally door dashing with somebody else? You know, this is her Forester or whatever. Body cam with the police.
Code 4 will be a busy issue.
Please wait.
No return to Idaho. Through Iowa ID only.
Copy, thank you. How these work is if you can go to the courthouse and show that at the time you were pulled over, you had current insurance, then they sometimes will work with you and they can just dismiss it, okay? The reason we issue these citations is obviously if you hit somebody and you don't have insurance, that person's out a lot of money, right? So we take it pretty serious, all right?
Okay, so right there.
Time you were pulled over, you had current insurance?
What a bad luckster, man. Curious to me. About just like the behavior.
Alrighty, ma'am, here's your documents back for you, okay? So I was unable to find anything on the state return, just like you said, all right? So I am going to issue a citation. Now, generally how these work in line. Good evening.
Hi, yeah, my headlight's out. I'm actually trying to earn money to go.
Gotcha. Alrighty. Yep, no big deal. I'm Corporal Payne. That's why I stopped you guys. All right, where are you guys headed this evening?
Good. Just in the middle of a dash, so I just want to.
Okay, gotcha. You got your.
Where are you headed this evening? I'm just in the middle of a dash. Just in the middle of a dash, man. I'm dashing with one headlight. Then she gets pulled over again. Talk about bad. bad luck. Thompson. Now, where the heck does she say this? Idaho. I gotta put my notes on. 8:56 is when she says it. Okay.
The reason
I am friends with Bill Thompson.
we issue these citations is obviously if you hit somebody and you don't have insurance, that person's out a lot of money, right? So we take it pretty serious, all right? So
yeah, I need to get it straightened out.
Yeah.
I've gotten one in the past. So
Yeah.
I'm friends with Bill Thompson.
Okay, alrighty, sounds good.
I'm friends with Bill Thompson right there. June 2022. I am friends with Bill Thompson. Get a t-shirt made. Molly, love it. This case has it all. So what's the day that I actually put this video out? It's 6 is when she says it.
Okay, the reason
I am friends with Bill Thompson. June 25th, 2025. Ann Taylor files her request on June 25th, 2025. Just interesting. We were just popping them all out then. All of these. She didn't know any of this. Ann Taylor, for all that time, didn't know any of this. That means that she was no way, shape, or form looking into any type of drug angle, in my opinion. Because all of this stuff is Molly being in like the... or maybe this brought her into contact with how Brian Cover got in that area. Because he started like using again and he was kicking it with these peeps. I have no idea. None. I just think it's interesting that you're asking for all of this stuff on June 25th, 2025. You know? And then Molly, man, literally 15 minutes down the road, gets popped again. It's pulled over again. So. Alrighty. Well, that's going to wrap it up, guys. Thank you so much, moderators. You guys rock. Angel, thank you so much for purchasing for memberships for other people. And Moto Man, coming back to it. $300. Maybe I'm dumb. But if they weren't going to use the IGG, then what other evidence did they have to convict BK? They were just going to use the fact that it matched to the swab. But that's why it mattered. Because if the probable cause got tossed out, if that search warrant would then be deemed, that's what would kick the DNA. That's the problem. But all right, guys, until next time, have a lovely night. Have a lovely night.